All right, everyone, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be, whenever you're listening to this. So glad to have you here. I've got a full crew, and I'm going to waste no time today bringing them on. So I'm going to go ahead and get George, Troy, and Leslie added in here so they can all say hello. Welcome to the chat this morning. We're going to have a short and sweet conversation just to give you a little bit of a preview, a teaser about next week's upcoming Anti-Racism Forum. So if you caught this last week, George and I did a little preview. We'll be hosting the event next week, and we actually wanted to bring on Leslie and Troy to talk about the reason behind this. I said yes, some of the why. So without any further ado, George, you want to say hello to everyone before I pass it off and let Troy and Leslie do a quick intro? And we can't hear you.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. All right, much better.
Hey, we're testing it out for next week, right? Good morning, everybody. I'm glad that you joined us again. I'm looking forward to this quick chat with Miss Leslie and Mr. Troy.
Awesome. So, Leslie, if you don't mind, ladies first.
Sure.
Just give a brief intro, who you are, and then we can, again, I think I'll let you and Troy do intros, and then we'll talk about the why, because both of you have been a driving force behind this, and I'm excited for you to share that.
Sure. First, I'm Leslie Lyons. I am Marketing Director for People Strategy. Been with the company since about 2012. And for those that don't know what People Strategy does, we're a full-service employee benefits broker and an HR technology provider.
Awesome. Wonderful. Troy, welcome, sir.
Hey, well, good morning, everyone. Ben, really appreciate you putting this together. So it's been a pleasure thus far to work with you and Leslie, and I'm looking forward to the event next week and hearing you and George moderate this excellent panel that we're going to have discussed each day. Again, my name is Troy Felder. I'm the president of NAAAHR Atlanta. I've been an active member of the chapter since 2014 when I first moved here to Atlanta, and I've been the president now for the last several months. I've been an active member on the board now for the last 3 to 4 years. So really looking forward to this event.
Wonderful. So as I mentioned earlier, again, George and I, if you heard us last week, if you didn't, you can catch that preview. It's still archived on YouTube, on LinkedIn. But we gave a little bit of a preview about this Anti-Racism Forum that's coming up next week. And just to give you the details, if you don't have them already, August 24th to 28th, that is happening. 2 to 3 Central or 3 to 4 Eastern every single day next week. So we'll be hosting panels with different leaders, experts in the field, talk about different things. And again, I mentioned this a minute ago, some of the driving forces behind this, Leslie, Troy, their organizations they represent have been really pushing this. So I was hoping, if you two are willing to take a few minutes and talk about the why behind this. Why now? Why it's important? Why would you spend your time and effort? You can't get that time back. Georgia mentioned that to me recently, right? Time's important. So why would you invest in something like this?
Sure. I'll get started. After the death of George Floyd, a lot of companies began issuing statements in support of Black Lives Matter and just giving their position on social injustice and racial inequality. Our executive team wanted to do that, but they did not want to do that without some kind of an action plan behind it. Because the words are great, but the action is much more significant and, in our opinion, what is needed at this time. So we started to discuss it internally and came up with the idea to have a forum where the community that we support, which is HR professionals, could start having the uncomfortable conversations that are so essential to beginning to create action plans and move towards real and long-term change that is absolutely needed. On a personal level, I am so excited about this event. As a white female, it's really hard to know what you can do to be part of the solution. And this has given me personally kind of that first jumping point off to actually put some action behind everything, I believe personally needs to happen. So I'm just really, really excited about this event. Reached out to Ben. Obviously, we've worked together in the past and knew that he's done events like this and needed somebody to, provide that support. And then we both wanted George to be another co-moderator, and then Ben connected us with Troy, which was just the icing on the cake to have an organization like Troy behind this. So again, we're just so thrilled and really excited at the panelists that we've had step forward and be willing to participate.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, and for me, Ben, I kind of looked at it from two different lenses. First professionally and then personally. From a professional standpoint, I actually started with a new organization, and it was not only their response to COVID, but also their response to the racial injustice that we've been seeing in our community for decades now. That really affirmed that decision to make a change. And so, I think back to our CEO speaking about why it was necessary not to apologize for anything that has taken place, but more so to acknowledge it so that we can move forward. That was, 3 months ago, right after Memorial Day, I should say, right after the death of George Floyd. As we kind of fast forward, we just had a town hall this past Friday, HR town hall, and our SVP of diversity and cultural impact talked about, again, to Leslie's point, a lot of organizations were issuing these statements. And for our organization, we did not want to react by just issuing a statement. Her words were, we wanted to respond. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to, helping other HR professionals craft a response. And I think they'll be able to take that back to their organizations. And so that's really what the work of the National Association of African Americans and Human Resources, that's where we start. The Atlanta chapter is the largest chapter in the country, but we are a chapter within a larger national organization that is really focused on these issues, focused on this time. Because of this pandemic, we've had to push our national convention, which was scheduled for October, to February of next year. But what that did was allowed us to pivot and change the tenor, the focus of that national conference to this very issue around diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, respect, and peace. And so, I would add a word that I've utilized over these last several weeks as well, is you look at our event going beyond diversity and inclusion. This Antiracism Forum will hopefully also get us to the point where we move towards justice. And I think that's really what all of us want to see take place.
That's so important. I think one of the key things when Ben brought this to me, and we've been having an ongoing conversation since May, about a lot of these different things and really wanting to work together. One of the key things that I loved about this when he brought it up was, we wanted it to be more than just a talk. I think a lot of conversations have been had in a lot of organizations and businesses. And the two words that really start this whole thing off is going beyond. So going beyond the conversation, going beyond just talking or wanting to understand, I think is important. Troy, what is it that, from being a man of color and a Black man, especially in Atlanta, we've seen it hit home in the last couple of months and seen a lot of those protests and including the rise, and just it caused division. For you, going beyond just a conversation and having people wanting to come to you as a Black man saying, teach me, what can I do? From the perspective of you, what does it mean to go beyond? And how can people do that, especially from a personal standpoint? I think we want to address personally, because before we can change a company, we must first change ourselves. How do you see that happening when we're talking about going beyond just a conversation in a forum?
Certainly. And so thanks for the question. And not only as a Black male, but also the father of two Black boys, this is a real and relevant conversation to be had as we move beyond just diversity and inclusion, moving towards equity and justice, as I stated previously, because I have to have a concern for them. I made the comment some weeks ago, and I've made it a few times in different arenas and with different audiences, is that this conversation around how to deal socially, whether it be with someone that sees you, sees the color of your skin first, that may just be an adult or maybe a person in authority, i.e. Someone that's a police officer. That conversation with my boys that are 9 and 11 years old actually precedes the conversation around the birds and the bees. And that's really the world that we live in nowadays. When we talk about going beyond from a professional standpoint, again, looking at it through those two lenses, you really look at allyship. If we're going to go beyond, I think it's really important to align with like-minded individuals such as yourself, but also like-minded individuals that don't look like me. That's what really allyship looks like. And again, going back to my day job, some of the words that we've utilized as for years, we've had whites, Caucasians, non-people of color that have been operating as bystanders. When I look at the work that Ben and Leslie are looking to do, the word that we utilize within my organization is now being an upstander, someone that's going to stand up when they see something that's not going as it should, something that's unjust, immoral, and someone that's looking to get into some good trouble. If I could quote the late Congressman John Lewis, you hear from his state that he represented. And so that's really what this is all about: allyship, being an upstander, going beyond, so we can get to that next level.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Leslie, going to you, obviously it's the opposite side, right? It's, we're living in a very sensitive, I like to call it sensitive America. When I grew up, we don't have grandmas like we used to have, and the neighborhood's different. I remember as a child growing up in the inner city before I was adopted. If I did something wrong, I don't even know the neighbor, but the neighbor got on to me, and the neighbor would take me. If my auntie found me before my mom, then I ended up home with 3 or 4 discipline. But now it's very sensitive. And even more so for the white community that wants to say, I want to be a part of the solution. How has it, struck you in the sense of, I have a passion, I have a love for people, all people, and I want to make sure that my African-American brothers or my Black, indigenous people of color don't feel separated from me. How, from your perspective as a white woman, being in the professional field of HR, how's that been a challenge for you, and what have you done to prepare yourself to go beyond?
Well, I think for me, the first key was awareness and overcoming my ignorance. Honestly, trying to educate myself on the realities of what people of color deal with on a daily basis. I really just had no comprehension, whether that's a product of the lack of education in the school system, not teaching real history, or also part of my own blindness, right? And saying things like, I'm not racist. I have friends who are Black. My kids are in a diverse school. Really starting to understand that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not racist or have racist thoughts. And that's a really, really difficult thing to acknowledge and to accept, and to look in the mirror and say, you're part of the problem. And then say, no, I want to go beyond that and be part of the solution. I have 2 children myself. I have one that just started college, and I have a junior in high school. And I don't want them to grow up as I did with blinders on. I want them to have their eyes wide open and to learn how to speak up for those who are, treated unjustly, whether it be a person of color or due to their, sexual orientation or their gender. Just being an ally. I think that was Troy, you put that word out there, and it's really being an ally for one another, every human being. So that's for me what going beyond is really starting with yourself, taking a long, hard, deep look as a white person and saying, what am I doing wrong and how can I fix it and improve myself and others moving forward.
The comment about the kids, Leslie, your kids are older than mine. We have 4, 10 and under. But the same thing that Troy was saying a minute ago about him teaching his boys about what to expect in the world, that's a hard conversation to have. I can't imagine having to tell my kids that thing. The questions, the conversation we're having is on the other side. Like, we've got to be thinking about how we can do this. I don't want them to wait until they're my age to figure these things out, to realize, like, I had no idea that these people that I love, my friends, colleagues, people I work with, that they face this reality that I'm just not aware of because I've never taken the time to be intentional about that. So we're working to actually teach them those things in age appropriate ways so they don't just suddenly have a surprise at some point in their future where they realize that they've done the wrong thing or that they're not aware of that. So glad you mentioned that piece of it, because that kind of struck a chord with me. I'm always thinking about the legacy we leave and what that looks like. And the thought that I had the other day was, I don't want my kids, when they are our age, to be talking about equality in future tense. Right. I don't want them to be talking about it in future tense. I want them to be talking about it like it is here. It is already here. So that's my hope for them and for all the kids represented here. One of the things that, again, George and I gave a little tidbit last week, a little hint on some of the agenda. I'm going to go back through those topics really quick, and then I'm going to ask you, Troy and Leslie, if there's all of them are good. Every day is going to be phenomenal. We've got some amazing panelists, but there's a day specifically you're like, I'm kind of curious about that one. I'm excited to hear what's said. I'm going to give you a second to chime in on those before we wrap up the call. All right. So day 1 next week on Monday, we're going to talk about what is anti-racism, why is this important, why should we be having this conversation. Day 2 will be around hiring, being more inclusive, being intentional about including people of color and not excluding them from the conversation. Day 3 will be around microaggressions, how those factor into everyday interactions and how to combat those. Day 4 is on mentoring, internal mobility, support for minority employees, and how to make sure that we're doing the right things by them. The peanut butter spread approach, where everybody gets the same thing, is not, it might be equal, but that's not equality for those individuals because they might need something different and unique. And then day 5, we're going to talk about creating an action plan, sticking it all together, taking the ideas from everyone else. And again, the thing I love about George is he is super action oriented. So he's not going to let us get away from this conversation without saying, here's some things that we can do as allies, but here's some things that we can do maybe as people of color to build this case and to make sure that we're supporting our colleagues too in what we're doing. So those are the big picture 5 days next week. Troy, is there a day specifically you're like, I can't wait to hear what's shared on this one of those conversations?
Yes, and I guess it goes back to something that I'm passionate about, and that's mentoring. And so that's going to be day 4 on the 27th, where we're really looking at minority development, mentorship, and really doing that the right way. I know there's a lot of again, maybe the word that I used a little bit earlier, a lot of reaction around executive hiring. And making sure that you're having diverse candidates in that EOT, ELT level. But, a lot of times I look at those hires as oftentimes being external. But if you're going to have internal promotion that's done the right way, you really need to have a focus in terms of that middle management from a minority standpoint. Women, people of color, at that middle management where you have a focus that you can then advance them to that executive level naturally throughout the organization without that always having to be an external hire. And so, again, that's a personal passion of mine, mentorship, development, and really understanding that difference. If we get to that level of the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, those things are really what can support minority candidates as they matriculate through an organization.
Wonderful. How about you, Leslie? Is there a day specifically that you're most excited about? I know we've had a hand in working on the agenda, so You can't say all of them. That's what my 5-year-old would say. Like, I like them all. Is there a day specifically you're most excited about?
Okay, I won't say all, but there are two, not just one. I actually am excited about them all, but I'm really excited about microaggressions, day 3, primarily because I'd actually never heard the term before until about a month ago. We were doing some internal training, and I think we're all guilty of them. Regardless of your color or your gender, I just don't think we're even aware of them. At least I wasn't. And the examples that were given in the training, I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, I do that all the time. It was that you see a female in scrubs, medical scrubs, and you automatically assume she's a nurse, not the doctor. And, it's like things like that you're not even aware that you're thinking, or things that you might say that build up over time and impact an individual. So for me, learning more about microaggressions and expanding the education to everyone who's attending, although, they may have heard of it and be aware of it, and then teaching them how to combat that, because it is a big problem. So that one, and then the action plan, because I'm like George, I am a big believer in putting action behind the words.
Excellent. That's wonderful. George, one of the things you had asked me to do, and I totally blanked because I was pumped to talk about the topics, is I was going to give a shout out to a couple of the actual panelists who are going to be joining us next week. We have over a dozen, so can't call them all out here and call the roster out, but just a couple quick notes to give you an idea of who we have. We have Jared Fitzpatrick. He's actually a culture leader at the U.S. Fed. He's going to talk on the day on hiring. We have Daryl Dixon. He's going to be there on the day talking about microaggressions. And Tompkinson, Dr. David Arrington, both on the day around create an action plan. They're both have that coaching mindset. So how do we make these things sticky and make them long-term impact, not just another program, another policy that kind of fades away in the distance. So really excited to hear from them and from the other panelists we're going to have next week. Every single one of them was picked because they have expertise in the areas where we're going to ask them to share those things with us. So the note I'm actually sending out to them in a little bit is basically tell them this is your chance to shine. We're going to give you every chance to do that. And we can't wait to hear what each of them has to share. So we're going to make sure and make that all available for all of you. We're going to have these, one of the things Leslie and I talked about, we're going to have them recorded so we can share them after the fact. Some people said, hey, this is amazing, but I can't be there on Thursday because I've got a training, or I've got we got an interview for a new hire coming in. So we're going to make sure we capture these things so people that miss them can come back and revisit and learn and use these as an internal resource if you're going to use it for your managers and help teach them these things. So there's some good stuff coming out of this, not just happening next week, but ongoing. We can't wait to see the impact this has. George, any closing comments, sir, before we wrap up for the day?
I was waiting for that comment. I think, number one, this is for everybody. This is not just for the HR. This is not just for the C level. This is not for leaders, not only for leaders. This is for people in general. The mindset of I don't need this because I'm not prejudiced, or I don't have racism in my heart, or I love all people. And no matter, the skin color, this is for everybody in general. I am excited to be surrounded with, people that are smarter than me. I like to be the dumbest guy in the room. And I'm excited to learn myself. You and I have been having this conversation, being adopted, and brought into a white family. I experienced things later in my life when I was married and I saw some things, or when I traveled to certain areas where I saw and experienced some of these, the racism, things of that nature. But for me, I didn't, react in such a way that I took offense. And so, from my perspective, I've always said, and my mentor, has taught me, how you view things is how you do things. And so I want to challenge people to join us, even if it challenges your viewpoint, your perspective, because your perspective sometimes, whether it's a lie or truth, can become your reality. And so if you are a leader in an organization, a company, your business, I want to challenge you as a leader to make this a priority for your team, and that's from the top down. It doesn't matter. It doesn't stop. If they're able to even just listen in the background, to have it flowing, on their computer or whatnot, I would ask you to allow those things to take place. It's 1 hour of your day is all we're asking. If you cannot make it, obviously you can, as Ben said, you can follow up with this. But number one, this is for everybody, and I just want to challenge leaders to understand that and speak that, because people will follow your example before they follow your advice, and you have to be a part of that example. That you're going to be you're going to make it a point to be a part of the conversation and a part of going beyond just a conversation. So I'm excited for everybody to join us starting Monday, and I'm excited to learn, to grow, to be challenged from my own viewpoint, my own perspective. And coming into it willing to be impacted and changed, and say, George, it's okay to be wrong, and maybe I'm wrong in some of those those perspectives that I may have myself. And so join us. Don't miss out. I'm excited. Leslie, Troy, I appreciate y'all being a part of this and allow me to be a small part of this as well.
Oh, we're very thankful to have both of you.
Wonderful.
Certainly. Looking forward to it, George. Thank you.
Awesome. Troy, Leslie, George, thank you all for the conversation today. Again, for everybody else, this is just a little snippet, a preview of what's going to happen next week, and we can't wait to see you there. You can check it out. I'll have the link pop up on the screen here in just a second, so you can get that. Make sure we get you guys to show up. There we go. That will get you there, and I'll put it up on the end screen video as we're closing out. But I want to thank every one of you for watching, for commenting, for sharing, but also each of you for joining me in the conversation this morning. Everything that I've heard so far is another reason why I'm doubly excited to be a part of this. I tell you, when I get a front row seat to learning from some of the smartest people in our space, and I can't wait for that. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope to catch you next week on the session.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.